Dumelang, welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Manyatela. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, what's next for the Deputy Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya? He has lost his High Court application to overturn the stay-at-home order he received in July. A full bench in the High Court in Pretoria dismissed his application with costs, agreeing with the National Police Commissioner that he was well within his rights to ask Sibiya to stay at home pending an investigation after the KZN Police Commissioner Ntantla Mkonazi implicated him in allegations of corruption in the SAPS. Shadrack Sibiya's lawyer, Levitt, faces the nation tonight. Also on the show, does our government of national unity have a plan to grow the economy and create jobs? Unemployment has worsened and our economic growth has been sluggish. There are now calls for our government to declare an economic emergency. Productivity essays, Justice Sefularo, which is an entity under the Department of Employment and Labor responsible for promoting productivity and job creation, is going to be joining us tonight. Plus, how must the South African government deal with informal settlements that are inundated with illegal foreign nationals? And how is the South African Human Rights Commission balancing between protecting the rights of foreigners, including illegal ones, and ensuring illegal immigration is not encouraged? We speak to the Human Rights Commission's Chairperson, Nissen. And then later, former Minister Naledi Pandor speaks to us about the state of South Africa, the shifting global order, and how this country and the continent should position itself. But first, my comment. So the GDP numbers were announced today by Stats SA. The Statistician General Risenga Maluleka announced that following marginal growth of 0.1% in the first quarter of 2025, the real gross domestic product strengthened by 0.8% in the second quarter of this year. So from April to June, that is. He said manufacturing, mining and trade led growth on the production supply side of the economy.
When we look at the amplified space that we're talking about, particularly from the first quarter of 2022, we can see that the economy has been moving sideways. And of course, when we come to the right-hand side, as of the last quarter of 2024, we grew at 0.4%, returning a growth of 0.1% first quarter 2025. And indeed, this quarter that we are reporting on, sitting at 0.8%. We want to look at which industries have contributed the most to this 0.8%. We can see particularly that mining and quarry, as well as manufacturing, and indeed trade, catering and accommodation contributed strongest, having contributed on the right-hand side 0.2 of a percentage point each.
I mean, 0.8% GDP growth is not exciting at all. It's modest growth. It's an improvement from the first quarter. But for this country to create jobs, we need the economy to grow more than that. Our official unemployment rate rose to 33% in the second quarter, according to Stats SA, and that is bleak.
Out of the 8.4 million people, 6.4 million are in what we call long-term unemployment. That is, they have been unemployed for 12 months or more. That 6.4 million returns the percentage share at 76.6%. And indeed, when we come to those that are in short-term unemployment, we are sitting at 2 million, accounting for 23.4%.
And when you look at the situation of unemployment, it's even more pronounced among the youngest job seekers. When you look back to 2015, in the first quarter of 2015, the official unemployment rate for the youth aged 15 to 34 was 36.9%. By quarter one this year, that figure had climbed to 46.1%. That's like a 9.2 percentage point increase. And that highlights the deteriorating prospects for millions of people in this country. So when our GDP grows at 0.8%, like it was announced earlier today, what are the chances that we will create jobs at this rate? You need the economy to grow at about 5 to 6% to be able to create meaningful jobs. Economists say you need about R500 billion to be injected in the economy by government and the private sector. Eskom needs to be consistent with no power cuts. Transnet must be effectively operational. There are many other things that need to be attended to for us to see a jump start to this economy. So what's the plan? Does the GNU have a plan? Mmusi Maimane, who's the leader of BOSA, said earlier today that these GDP figures that were announced today show clearly that the GNU is failing to grow this economy. He said this reminder from the GDP data is that we have an economic emergency. But does the GNU actually agree with that? The Minister of Labour, Noma Kosazana Meth, said last year that her department will prioritize job creation initiatives and intervention. She was speaking during the tabling of the department's budget vote for the 2024-2025 financial year.
Are still struggling with the triple challenges of poverty, high unemployment, and inequality. Unemployment in the context of our country is structural, deep-seated, systemic, and stubborn. That is why agencies such as Statistics SA continue to share disturbing data with us all. In its first quarter report of 2024, the working age population expanded marginally, yet unemployment rose, pushing our national unemployment rate to 32.9%. It is my considered view, honorable members, that sustainable solution for such a crisis cannot come from one department, even from government alone, as it is a societal challenge that requires a collective approach. We plan to lead the department in upping the ante pertaining to coordination of work and ensuring that job creation initiatives and interventions and innovation are the order of the day.
So upping the ante. So where are we now? How much progress has been made by the department? I mean, when the economy is so sluggish, when unemployment is worsening, the US tariffs that were imposed on the country are going to worsen the unemployment crisis. This country needs reforms that will improve the economic outlook, placing job creation, particularly for young people, as a priority. Otherwise, we're dealing with a ticking time bomb. So the question we're asking you tonight is, do you agree with Mmusi Maimane that we have an economic emergency? Do you think this GNU is treating the sluggish economy and the unemployment rate as a crisis that it is? And what do you think are going to be the consequences here if the economy continues to be so stagnant and jobs are not being created? You can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name and your surname and where you're sending the voice note from. And please keep it at 30 seconds. Alternatively, you can send us an X on @FaceTheNation SABC. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. The Gauteng High Court in Pretoria has dismissed with costs the Deputy National Police Commissioner for Crime Detection, Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya's bid to return to work. Sibiya has been challenging the National Police Commissioner, Fani Masemola's decision to place him on a leave of absence. Sibiya was placed at the center of allegations of corruption and misconduct within the South African Police Service by the KZN top cop, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Ian Levitt is the lawyer representing Shadrack Sibiya and joins us now via video link. Ian, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening.
So the judgment didn't go your way today. Will you be appealing?
We have so many conflicting and competing priorities at the moment that we have to decide which is the best route to pursue in order to achieve my client's ultimate goal, and that is to clear his name. One of the reasons that the application was dismissed, of course, was that the court found that it was moot, the request to, or the application to the court. An appeal may very well be moot. So we may appeal, but the appeal may come out in 6 to 9 months' time when the Commission has already done its work. So perhaps the priority would be to focus on the parliamentary inquiry that's coming up, as well as the Commission of Inquiry. That may be more effective for our ends.
So to clarify then, at this point, you're choosing to rather focus on preparing Shadrack Sibiya's testimony for the Madlanga inquiry as opposed to go on appeal, because as you say, the court had said that the matter of him being placed on leave of absence is moot because he was served with a notice of suspension. So even if you appeal, the reality is there's a notice of suspension now that has somehow overtaken the events.
Well, firstly, I must just say, when I come to perhaps disagreeing with the court, that my client has emphasized, that I do emphasize, and I wish to do so, that my client has the utmost respect for the rule of law in general and for the court's ruling in particular. Everything that is done pursuant to this ruling must be underscored by that focus and emphasis by him. The fact that it was found to be moot does not, is and of itself, then make the court's ruling or make the problem that was before the court nothing to be dealt with. We've had that case before when a person was unceremoniously removed from the country. I think it was called the Bashir case, where the Constitutional Court said that in certain circumstances it is of such national importance that the court must make a ruling on this. And I believe this is one of the cases that perhaps the court may have and should have dealt with it. It didn't, and I respectfully disagree, and I respect the court's decision. But this case is of such national importance that it may have been a good idea to have done so.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at the heart of Masemola's decision to even place Sibiya on suspension or even place him on leave of absence, and of course later on this notice of suspension, is that issue of defying an instruction regarding the political killings task team. Masemola says that he had instructed him to phase out the task team and not disband it immediately. Do you disagree with how the judges have assessed that matter and the conclusion that they have come to? What is your assessment of what they have found, particularly when it comes to what Masemola says he had instructed Shadrack Sibiya to do and what he did in return?
I think the court was quite correct in the beginning of the judgment to say that this was really a procedural issue. The dispute of facts really didn't come into that much of a play, because there's a rule really that when there's a dispute of fact, an application isn't the best route to have disputes of fact dealt with by a court. I myself find that there are various versions put out by the National Commissioner, and we are quite happy that these versions are now put on oath, that when the Commissioner is at the inquiry or at the parliamentary inquiry, as well as the Commission of Inquiry, now that we have the versions on oath, this is a great positive for our client that has come out of this process. So we're quite happy that now these versions shouldn't change. Well, we hope they shouldn't change any further.
But to be clear, your client hasn't denied the version that Masemola has put forward, that he instructed him to phase out that political killings task team and not disband it immediately, because he says Shadrack Sibiya ended up sending emails to people and saying this mandate of the task team has to be terminated within 7 days, and he asked for the dockets to be transferred to head office, which is what ultimately happened.
I think that you perhaps may be taking a snapshot of a video and ask me to maybe extrapolate that snapshot and say, what do I think of that snapshot in regard to the entire video? If you recall, this has been going on for years. The issues started in earnest in January, And there seem to be perhaps many fingers in the pie of this decision that was ultimately made. And that's why I specifically said to you that we are quite happy that affidavits have now been signed, which would make it very difficult for versions to change when the real crux comes to the fore, and that is at the Commission of Inquiry, where we are actually quite, I don't want to say excited to go, but we're quite happy to go to clear our name. We want to clear our name, and that's where we want to be at.
Yeah. Has Shadrack Sibiya been contacted to appear before the parliamentary inquiry? You've said that the attention now is going to be on preparing for the Madlanga inquiry. Has he been contacted to appear for that parliamentary inquiry, and when is that expected?
He has been contacted to appear at the inquiry or to be interviewed, and it should be during the course of next week.
All right, during the course of next week. Ian Levitt, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for making time for us. As you can hear, the position really there is that they have decided that they will rather focus on preparing for Shadrack Sibiya's appearance at both these inquiries, the Madlanga Commission, but also the parliamentary inquiry. Parliamentary inquiry, of course, expected that he will appear next week, and not wanting there to get into the merits of what happened there and saying that will probably be reserved for the Commission of Inquiry. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Now, data released by Stats SA shows that investment in the country remains depressed, while negatively affecting economic growth. The latest GDP numbers indicate that the country's economy grew by 0.8% in the second quarter, following an increase of 0.1% in the first quarter of the year. Despite this slight growth, our government has expressed concern over the recent mass job cuts following retrenchment notices across various sectors. Justice Sefularo is the Executive Manager for Business Turnaround and Recovery at Productivity SA. It's an entity of the Department of Employment, and he joins us now via video link. Mr. Sefularo, thank you for your time. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement, and good evening to the viewers at home.
We have an unemployment crisis in this country. We potentially have an economic crisis too. Is there actually a realization by this on the part of government that we are at a crossroad, in your view?
Yes, Clement, the government realized that we are at a crossroads. Government has put a number of interventions to try and mitigate the challenges that we are experiencing. Some of those instruments reside within the Department of Employment and Labor, together with its entities. For an entity like Productivity South Africa, for instance, have specific programs that assist businesses that are in distress with development and implementation of turnaround strategies to avert and minimize job losses. Whereas your unemployment insurance fund is able to bring cash injection, temporary employer-employee relief scheme to stabilize the business when they go through this difficulty. When everything else fails, then the CCMA comes with facilitating Section 189 to ensure that this process is managed responsibly.
Yeah, but those are provisions that have already existed for a while now, and that hasn't really helped us much with our unemployment crisis. I mean, they are very important, don't get me wrong. But I suppose what I'm trying to figure out is, are there any fresh ideas? What's the plan of government? I mean, when the Minister of Labour presented a budget vote last year, she promised that the creation of decent jobs will be the department's key priority over the next 5 years. It's over a year now. When do we start seeing the fruits of those efforts?
Thank you for that wonderful question, Clement. There are a number of efforts and interventions that government is putting in place to mitigate the challenges that we are experiencing. From Productivity SA's perspective, we'll be sharing our annual report at the annual general meeting this coming Friday in Midrand, where we'll be sharing some of these experiences. For instance, the business turnaround and recovery, where it has intervened to save existing jobs. We have seen some businesses averting job losses and even starting to create jobs. I do agree that it should happen at a much larger scale than what we are currently going through. But indeed, these instruments are there and interventions are there that needs to be massified and expanded so that we can be able to see significant impact in the economy overall.
So what kind of assistance are we talking about here? Because, for instance, small businesses, which have proven to be the bedrock of this economy, and big business as well, how are you assisting them with reaching productivity levels so that they don't shed jobs? I mean, with the US tariffs, that's a reality facing us now. The Reserve Bank governor already warned that these tariffs could cost about 100,000 jobs, especially in the agriculture and automotive industries.
You are right indeed. The small, medium and micro enterprises are facing the wrath of these challenges in our economy. We work in partnership with your organized business, organized labor, as well as small business development. And we have interventions that we've tailored for competitiveness improvement services, where we go in as Productivity South Africa, diagnose what the challenges are within each enterprise that we intervene in together with management, and we are able to develop strategies and interventions that we implement over a period of time. And where we have intervened, as I've indicated, we are seeing positive results. The challenge that we have is to expand and massify these interventions, because we are not reaching everyone at the moment, but the interventions themselves have proven to be effective from the results that we have seen on interventions that we have done.
Can jobs be created, though, in an economy that grows at less than 2%, like meaningful jobs? Our GDP grew by 0.8%, as you know, in the second quarter of this year. That's not a growth that creates meaningful job, or is it?
It is not as simple as that, Clement. In the economy that is shedding jobs, you also have jobs that are getting created. But South Africa will need the GDP growth of at least 5% to be able to make impact in the high unemployment rates that we are currently facing. But the sum total of what is happening, indeed, we're seeing more losses, which means we need to massify and strengthen these interventions that are in place so that we can be able to move from the 0.8 growth of GDP that we've seen in the second quarter to a level of 5% and above to see meaningful impact in the economy overall.
And when do we do that? Because this is a crisis that has been at our doorstep for a while now. So you talk about the need to massify and also strengthen those interventions. When do we start seeing that? I suppose a lot of South Africans, when they see our economy as sluggish as it is, when they see unemployment numbers increasing as they have been, they look to the Department of Employment and they look to that department for answers, because that's part of its mandate. Hence, you've got people like Musi Maimane now calling for an economic emergency of sorts. So when do we start seeing those interventions, or government treating this sluggish economy and the crisis of unemployment as the crises that they are?
Indeed, Clement, these interventions cannot wait. These are interventions that are happening as we speak. You will know that government go through the Presidential Job Summit, the last one being in 2018, and we have a reconstruction and recovery plan that's in place as well. Government have never stopped to make these interventions. However, what I'm bringing here to the table is the fact that in platforms like this, where we are raising awareness of available interventions, is when we send the message out there so that we see more and more business taking advantage of these interventions that have proved to be both efficient and effective.
All right, Justice Sefularo, thank you so much for speaking to us about this crisis of unemployment. In fact, the question we've been asking you tonight on Face the Nation is what you think needs to be done. Given the slow economic growth and the unemployment crisis, do you think that this situation constitutes an economic emergency? That's what Musi Maimane says needs to be declared. This is a crisis that's been with us. Jobs, meaningful jobs are not being created. It's a ticking time bomb. Our economy is not growing at the rate where we're going to see meaningful jobs being created. So what needs to be done? Do we need an emergency of sorts being declared here? What are your thoughts? Send us a WhatsApp voice note or send us a tweet at Face the Nation SABC. Stay with us. Welcome back. Here's a reminder of the question we've been asking you on Face the Nation tonight. Given the slow economic growth and unemployment crisis, do you think this situation constitutes an economic emergency as suggested by the Bossa leader Musi Maimane? Let's look at some of the tweets that have come through. Bono says, we need to give the GNU some time to come up with strategies to try and push the economic growth. We can't be calling for economic emergencies because that will cause uncertainty, and some investors may panic and choose to go and invest where there is a stable economy. Let's move to this now. Former International Relations Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor says South Africa hosting the G20 summit presents an opportunity to align new changes facing the new world order. Pandor has warned that Africa risks being stuck on the sidelines as the global order shifts, from the re-election of Donald Trump as president of the US, the continuing rise of China and India's emergence as an economic powerhouse. Dr. Naledi Pandor joins us now via video link. Dr. Pandor, thank you so much for making time for us. Great to chat to you. Good evening.
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. Thank you for the opportunity.
I want us to start our conversation here at home before we talk about the global shifts. We've been talking on the show this evening about jobs, the unemployment crisis, the sluggish economy. We have spoken before about crime, which is out of control, corruption, which continues to be of great concern. Whistleblowers and investigators are being killed, and you've got top cops that are busy fighting each other. And all of this and other issues have tempted other people to suggest that we are somehow on the road to being a failed state. What do you think of where the country finds itself now, honestly? Because some people are beginning to lose hope.
Well, I think that South Africa is confronting a number of very complex problems. You've set out a number of them, but the description of failed state is not warranted in this country. We continue to have an economy that functions. We have a revenue service that collects revenue. We have a public service that functions, of course, not satisfactorily, but it continues to function. We have an education system where children are attending school each day. Salaries are paid. We have a very active private sector. So while there are deeply, deeply challenging problems, I don't think we should use exaggerated language such as a failed state.
And of course, as you say, those challenges and then would also warrant leadership to just steer the ship, so to speak. Do we have the right leadership, though? Do you think that, from your assessment, this GNU has demonstrated the ability to deal with those issues effectively and urgently?
Well, I think that the fact that the GNU has survived thus far indicates a useful level of political maturity in South Africa. It's the first time we've had a national coalition of this kind, apart from, of course, the inception of our democracy. We've had pockets of political parties working together, but it has tended to be one or two, not on this scale. And the fact that government has, I think, continued to persist in the role that it should play is an important advance. However, I do think that as a people and a country, we need to see a more determined effort to address the challenges that you have referred to. I still think there's a sense in which, there's some instability and one is not always clear. When we take this step, what is the actual goal that we intend to achieve? And this 0.8 growth that has been recorded, what are we going to do in order to provide support to sectors that are showing promise, in order to lift the growth to 2%, 3% and above? So what are the interventions? Who is engaging in what way with the private sector, with those companies that are showing real promise? What form of support in logistics terms is being provided to the agricultural sector, which is really showing that it is robust, that it can continue to contribute to our growth? How do we assist, for example, agriculture to retain jobs? And in the tourism sector, how do we grow it? These are areas where we know job growth is possible.
Yeah.
So one doesn't get a sense of the intensity, who's actually doing what, and what push is there to expand where there is success.
Yeah. What do you think are the consequences of that? Because I think that's precisely what is part of the problem. Is sometimes there are then these high-level plans that are being announced, but there's no clearly defined position on what is going to be done to respond to that crisis of unemployment or to the economy that has been sluggish for some time. What are those interventions? Who's responsible? Are they being held accountable? The former president, Thabo Mbeki, has spoken before about the possibility of an uprising of sorts and the potential for that. What do you think are the consequences of us being at this point where more and more people are growing disillusioned with the lack of actual plans and interventions, and their businesses are struggling, they are failing to find unemployment?
Well, I think that the sense that we're not seeing a clear set of objectives being referred to and being implemented just causes greater concern, despair and disillusionment. And I think it is important for the government to address that. So it might well be that there are plans that are underway and that they are being implemented. But I must say, as a South African out of government and as a member of the public who follows the news very, very closely, I think that there is a problem of communication. I recall, for example, the president in the last State of the Nation address referred to significant efforts at an infrastructure drive. Where is that? Someone should be telling us, because those are important interventions that, if properly addressed, will make a difference. And it is important that we know that these efforts are being pursued, they're achieving some success, or there's a problem. I don't think there's any difficulty with communicating to the public that we're having difficulty here, but we're fixing it up. But the sort of silence is what I think causes this apprehension.
Yeah, and speaking of the GNU, the ANC is, of course, the biggest party in the GNU. It's an organization you belong to. In fact, you recently reflected honestly on the state of the party and said, sometimes people regard the ANC with horror and shame. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think South Africans really know this very, very well, that there are areas in which we have failed the people of South Africa. And the ANC itself has been very frank about this. We've had serious problems of corruption, where some of our own members and leaders have been involved. There have been issues of irresponsible conduct, both at the level of morality as well as with respect to public resources, but also the expectation that the ANC would focus very seriously on reconstruction and development and ensure that the public service is efficient, is competent, and achieves the objectives that government has set for it. These are areas where we've not done as well as we should. When I spoke about the African National Congress at the Gertrude Shope annual lecture, I made the point about the failings of local government, and often that within that sphere, which is very important to communities, you often have representatives who look elsewhere for problem solving and who almost remove themselves from responsibility for contributing to development in their local community. But I said they have to understand that the vision and response needs to come from them. They can't look elsewhere. They are important to local development. And so we do need to look critically both at who we select to play a role in the different spheres of government, but also look at results. Who's doing what and who is not performing, and act when we are not getting what we desire.
On the international front now, the global order is shifting fast. How do we position ourselves as South Africa and even the broader continent so that we're not left behind?
Well, I think that South Africa has always, certainly the African National Congress, and therefore it being the largest party in South Africa, we've always been associated with a more progressive set of values rather than the right or more conservative value set. We really cast ourselves in the characterization that is implied by the content of our Constitution, and in particular, its Bill of Rights. So the expectation would be that South Africa would align with the progressive forces of the world that are trying to frame a multipolar international order in which countries work together in cooperation rather than in domination or negative competition. I think we've had a lot of unipolarity. There's been a very heavy dominance, particularly from the United States of America, and almost you do as we say, or we'll deal with you. We need a different kind of world, one that focuses on development, one in which countries are collaborating with each other, and a world in which we respect, very, very importantly, international law and multilateral institutions. And we've moved away from that. We need to come back to it.
Yeah, and speaking of the US, because we have a very tricky relationship with the US now, how do you suggest our government must deal, for instance, with the Trump administration? Because you do want to ensure good relations with the US, but you want your sovereignty to be respected and you don't want to be bullied. But President Trump operates completely differently.
Well, that's where setting a new character and tone of international relations is important. And South Africa has to assert, its views and perspectives. And I think President Ramaphosa has been saying this very, very clearly. I listened to part of his responses in, I think, the National Assembly today. And he was very, emphatic on saying that we wish to have good relations with the United States of America, but it must be on a basis where each respects the policy perspectives of the other, and where we have an understanding that it's not a big and little brother relationship. It's a relationship of sovereign nations. And I think it's critical that South Africa continues to maintain that perspective. I also believe that South Africa must play a role of influence in the BRICS family and continue initiatives such as the Hague Group and the assertion by South Africa of respect for international law and the promotion of peace and security in the world.
Dr. Naledi Pandor, thank you so much for speaking to us on Face the Nation tonight. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Let's move to this now. The South African Human Rights Commission has condemned utterances by the Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi as part of his plan to take back hijacked buildings and dismantle informal settlement in the province. Lesufi said evictions will be conducted even at 2 a.m. to avoid challenges. The rights body has described this conduct as inhumane, as disregarding and degrading, I should say, and dangerous. Chris Nissen is the chairperson of the South African Human Rights Commission, joining us now as we wrap up the show. Chris, thank you so much for making time. Good evening.
Good evening to you and good evening to the viewers.
What exactly are you concerned about regarding the evictions carried out by some municipalities and, of course, the intentions announced by the Premier of Gauteng?
First of all, we condemn all illegal occupations of land and buildings. But the law is very clear. If a person is there in 48 hours, you go through the court and due processes to get them out. And that is what we're looking at. However, the Commissioner, Kwinana, that has brought this to our attention, is very concerned that what the Premier said, allegedly said, that they will go at night. If you go at night, you'll have children sleeping there. And how is that going to happen? And the court will always tell you, what are your alternatives? Hence, yesterday I had a meeting with Commissioner Kwinana and asked her to arrange an urgent meeting with Premier of the Gauteng.
Yeah.
We're not standing in his way. We know that we cannot condone illegal occupation, but we're looking at the human aspect of it.
Yeah.
You can't go at night and remove people when children are sleeping, and then what then? Let the courts decide. Let's go through the due processes of the judicial process and let the court decide.
So what do you think it could be the solution? Because some of these informal settlements are occupied by illegal foreigners, and yes, some of them are pushed to set up these homes by circumstances, but some of them have taken advantage of our laws that protect them once they have set up their homes anyway. I think Panyaza Lesufi has explained that everything will be done according to the law. I think he also clarified this earlier today. He said these evictions are also intended to take back hijacked buildings so that you avoid displacements, especially for children. And in fact, if that is what is avoided, any suggestions then on how this can be carried out, how we can get these hijacked buildings back?
On the hijacked buildings, we cannot allow that. That's why I'm saying that let us follow due process in getting into the through the court procedures, and let the court decide on how we have to do that. However, let me also say that, we need to say to everybody in the area, especially in Johannesburg, where people are going, it's illegal to occupy a building that is not yours. It's illegal for you to sell a room that is not yours. It's illegal for you just to do whatever you want to do. However, we want to sit with the Premier and say to the Premier, how can we handle this matter?
Yeah.
How can we do this together and say, because there are many other South Africans that also do not have places to stay, but let us create a place of find a place for people to stay and let them not occupy illegally buildings.
Isn't that part of the problem, Chris, that constantly people are told, do not occupy land illegally, do not sell or buy homes illegally, do not be here in this country illegally. But people really don't listen to that, because at the end of the day, they know that our laws somehow protect them. In fact, let me ask it this way. There is a sense from some South Africans that you, as the Human Rights Commission, are prioritizing the rights of illegal foreigners at the expense of local South Africans. And I'm sure you've seen the passionate and angry responses from some South Africans towards the organization. They're growing frustrated. Does that concern you at all?
Of course it does. It concerns us and the commissioners and the commission, because unfortunately, our act is very clear that we need to protect the rights of all people in the Republic of South Africa. That's what our act says. But what concerns us as the commission, and it's been raised with us on many occasions, by various people in political circles and of course in parliament and so on. What concerns us is that we are dealing with, at the end of the problem, our border management and Home Affairs are not doing what they're supposed to do. I've visited many borders, and there's no border fencing, whatever, nothing. People can just walk across, come in and do whatever they want to do. Secondly, our Home Affairs need to do their work. People are accusing the commission, saying, people are going to clinics and hospitals and they're being served more than South Africans. People are accusing us that we are protecting foreign nationals. Our act is saying that we must protect the rights of our people. But the act does not say we can allow any illegal activity. If there's any illegal activity, the SABC must take its course. The relevant government institution must take its course and do whatever they have to do to stop any illegal activity. And that's why we're saying, we will engage with Premier so we can find a way of how we can, work on finding a solution. But we will not, what we don't want, is in the night to go and remove people because children are sleeping there. We need to find a way of saying, Premier, let's find an elegant way of meeting with these demands. But clearly, what is very important in this country, our people are indeed saying to us, we are not treated the same way, because if we go to a clinic, if we go to a day hospital, go to hospital, etc. But the fact of the matter is, we are not protecting for illegal foreign nationals. We are protecting people in this country, and we first and foremost, we are looking after our citizens.
Well, Chris Nissen, thank you so much for speaking to us. That is the chairperson at the South African Human Rights Commission. Thank you for watching the Tuesday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back with you on Thursday at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.